So, think about the last time you were really trying to learn something new.
Hmm.
Did you ever stop and wonder if the way you felt while you were studying, if that was actually a good measure of how much you're taking in?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thought, right? Like, what if that feeling of ease, that sense of progress we sometimes get, what if it's actually a bit of a mirage?
Well, that's pretty much exactly the kind of fascinating puzzle we're tackling today on the deep dive.
Ah, good.
And it's all thanks to some really insightful research that you, our listener, actually shared with us.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's a study called Growing Out of the Experience: How Subjective Experiences of Effort and Learning Influence the Use of Interleaved Practice. It's from the Educational Psychology Review.
Okay.
And it dives right into that, how what we experience as we learn, the feeling of it, impacts our choices about how we actually go about learning.
Exactly. So, our mission here in this deep dive is to really get our heads around why we so often seem to lean towards study methods that feel good right away,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe don't lead to that really sticky, long lasting knowledge.
Oh,
And we're going to focus on this really interesting technique called interleaved practice and explore why our gut feelings about it might be steering us wrong.
okay, so let's break it down. The study really focuses on two main ways people tend to study or practice. First up is blocked practice.
Okay.
This is probably the one most of us kind of default to, right?
Right.
Imagine you're learning, say, different tennis serves. With blocked practice, you'd spend a good chunk of time just hitting flat serves over and over.
Just drilling that one serve.
Exactly. Then maybe you'd move on and spend another block of time just practicing your slice serve. It's one thing at a time, in a block.
Got it. Like learning guitar chords, maybe? Practicing just the C chord for 20 minutes.
Perfect example. Just C, C, C. That maybe G, G, G. That's blocked.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The alternative is interleaved practice. So instead of those solid blocks,
Yeah.
you're mixing things up. With the tennis serves, you might hit a flat serve, then a slice serve, then maybe a kick serve, then back to a flat serve, then a kick. You're interleaving, sort of weaving the different types together.
Okay, so with the guitar chords, it'd be like playing a C, then a G, then maybe an A minor, then C again, then G, mixing it up in the same practice session.
Precisely. And here's a really interesting finding, not just from this study, but others too. A lot of students, like upwards of 60%. In some studies, they feel like that blocked practice, the one thing at a time method, is actually more effective.
Hmm.
Does that resonate with you? When you think about learning something, does focusing on one piece feel more productive?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. It just feels like you're making faster progress. You can
Yeah.
really zero in on that one chord or that one serve, and you feel like, okay, I'm getting this before you move on. There's that definite sense of accomplishment.
And the study actually explains why blocked practice gives us that feeling. It's really, really good for initially spotting the common features within a single category.
Okay.
When you keep repeating the same type of thing, like the C chord, your brain quickly picks up on what all those instances have in common: the sound, the finger shape.
So it makes that early part of learning feel smooth, successful even.
Exactly. Your brain's going, okay, got the pattern here. This is easy, which feels great.
Instant reward, but I sense a but coming.
There's definitely a but. So here's where things get really interesting. The researchers bring up this idea called desirable difficulties. It's a term from Robert Bjork back in the 90s.
Desirable difficulties.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sounds intriguing.
It means learning strategies that actually feel harder in the short term. They might even be a bit frustrating, but they lead to much stronger long-term memory and a deeper, more flexible understanding. Think of it like a little bit of a productive struggle is actually really good for cementing learning in your brain.
So, if blocked practice is the smooth, easy path, interleaved practice is maybe the slightly bumpier road, but it actually gets you to a better destination in the end.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And this study strongly suggests that interleaved practice is one of those desirable difficulties. It's just not as straightforward at the start.
Okay, so if these harder strategies, these desirable difficulties, are ultimately better for us, why are we so drawn to the easier ones? Why do we often avoid interleaving?
Well, the study highlights a couple of key reasons. First, we tend to misinterpret that feeling of higher effort that comes with interleaving.
Right.
We think, wow, this feels tough. I must not be learning this very well. It feels like a sign of failure, almost.
Yeah, I can relate to that feeling.
Second, the actual benefits of these harder strategies, like interleaving, often don't show up immediately. You don't get that quick win.
Ah,
So because we don't see those instant gains, we mistakenly think the strategy just isn't effective. The study talks about this inaccurate monitoring of effort and learning and how we tend to associate high mental demands with low learning. It's like our brains are wired to equate ease with progress, even when that's, well, wrong in the long run.
That is so relatable. I can definitely think of times I've felt like I was just banging my head against a wall learning something.
Yeah,
I thought, ugh, this isn't working. Or maybe I'm just bad at this, but maybe that struggle was actually the point.
it very well could have been. That struggle might have been exactly what was helping you learn it more deeply.
Wow. Okay. So let's really dig into why interleaved practice works so well then, even with that initial difficulty.
Okay, let's do it. What's the magic behind mixing things up?
Yeah.
So the main reason, and the study really emphasizes this, is that interleaving forces your brain to actively distinguish between the different concepts or skills.
Okay. Distinguish. How?
Well, when you're doing block practice, just C chords, C chords, C chords, your brain can kind of get complacent, right? It's just focusing on the similarities.
Right. This is like the last one.
Right, exactly. But when you're constantly switching C chord, G chord, A minor, C chord, your brain has to work harder to spot the differences. What makes a C different from a G? What are the key distinguishing features? The study says it helps you detect differences between categories.
Ah, okay. So instead of just recognizing this is another C chord, my brain is actively comparing C to G, noticing the different fingerings, the different sounds. That makes sense.
Precisely. And the study we're looking at actually tested this really nicely. They used paintings by different artists.
Paintings. How did that work?
They had participants learn to recognize the styles of different artists. Some learned using blocked practice, seeing all paintings by one artist, then all by the next.
Okay.
Others learned using interleaved practice, seeing paintings by different artists all mixed together. Then they tested everyone on their ability to classify new paintings by those same artists.
Okay, and what was the verdict? Did mixing up the Monet and Renoir paintings, or whoever, actually help?
It really did, significantly. The study found that interleaved practice led to much better category learning. They actually had 2 different tests measuring this. And in both, the groups who learned via interleaving outperformed the blocked practice groups.
Wow, okay. That's pretty clear evidence then.
It is
Ah.
statistically significant, as they say.
So even though it probably felt harder to learn the different styles when they were all jumbled up, that initial struggle paid off in the end with better recognition. That's a key takeaway. But as we keep saying, it does feel harder at first, right? The study confirmed that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. When they asked the participants during the learning phase, how much effort are you putting in and how much do you feel you're learning?
Yeah.
Those doing interleave practice consistently reported feeling like they were putting in more effort and learning less compared to the blocked practice group.
Okay, so in the moment, it really felt like they weren't getting it as well.
Exactly. Which, again, really highlights why people might shy away from it. It feels like more work for less reward initially.
But, and this seems crucial based on the study's title, growing out of the experience, did that feeling change?
Ah, yes. This is the really important part. The researchers found that those subjective experiences, the feeling of effort, the sense of learning, actually improved over time for the interleaved group.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. As they continued with the interleaved practice, their reported effort started to decrease, and crucially, their sense of learning actually increased. The study has figures showing these trends, how those lines on the graph change over the practice blocks.
That is really encouraging. So it's not like it feels awful the whole time. It gets easier, and you start to actually feel like you're getting the hang of it, understanding the differences.
That's exactly the idea. The researchers suggest that as you get more familiar with the task through interleaving, your brain just gets better, more efficient at making those distinctions between categories.
Okay.
So the mental effort needed goes down, and those learning benefits, which might have been kind of hidden or delayed at first, start to become much more apparent, even to you, the learner.
So my brain is quietly getting better at sorting things out behind the scenes, and eventually I start to notice it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And this leads us nicely into another really interesting concept they explored in the study, something called the memorizing effort heuristic.
Memorizing effort heuristic. Okay, that sounds a bit technical. Break it down for us.
Yeah, it does sound a bit jargony, but the idea is actually quite simple. It's basically our tendency to use how much effort we feel we're putting in as a kind of mental shortcut to judge how well we're actually learning. But, and here's the twist, we often get it backwards, especially with these effective but harder strategies like interleaving.
How so?
We tend to think, wow, this feels really effortful, this is hard work, I must not be learning it very well.
Right. Effort equals bad.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And conversely, if something feels easy, smooth, low effort, we think, this is great. I'm really nailing this. We assume easy equals good learning. That's the heuristic, using effort as a cue for learning effectiveness,
Yeah.
but often in a misleading way.
So this heuristic is a big part of why we're so drawn to blocked practice, because it feels easier. So we mistakenly think, this easy feeling means I'm learning more.
Precisely. Even though, as the painting study showed, the long-term gains from interleaving are often superior, that immediate feeling of ease and fluency you get with block practice often wins out. Our brains grab onto that easy heuristic.
It's like our brains are kind of lazy, always looking for the path of least resistance.
Maybe not lazy, but definitely efficient.
Even if that path doesn't actually lead to the best learning outcome.
That's a good way to think about it. So the researchers here, they wanted to see if they could maybe nudge people, help them make better choices, look beyond that potentially misleading feeling of effort.
Okay, how did they try to do that?
They tried using what they called a metacognitive prompt.
Metacognitive, like thinking about your thinking.
Exactly. It was specifically a visual feedback prompt, or VFP. So what they did was, for half the participants, after they'd done the initial learning phase with both blocked and interleaved practice, they showed them visual summaries, like graphs showing how their own reported effort and perceived learning had changed over time for both strategies.
Oh, interesting. So they could literally see maybe, oh, look, my effort for interleaving went down over time and my feeling of learning went up.
That was the idea. They could see those trends visually. And they were also asked to reflect on these changes, why they might have happened, and how this information could help them choose the best strategy going forward. The study actually shows an example of what these visual prompts look like.
So the hope was, by making them consciously aware of how their own experience evolved, it might counteract that initial negative feeling about interleaving being too hard, and they'd be more likely to choose it.
That was precisely the hope. Make the benefits, especially the change over time, more salient.
Okay, that sounds like a really smart, logical approach. Did it work? Did showing them their own data make a big difference in getting them to choose interleaved practice?
Well, this is where it gets a bit more nuanced. The overall result was actually somewhat surprising.
Oh.
The VFP, the visual feedback, did not significantly increase the overall use of interleaved practice in the next phase of the study.
Huh. Really? That's unexpected. You'd think, seeing the proof, their own data.
You would think, wouldn't you? When they just looked at the numbers, the group that got the visual feedback wasn't dramatically more likely to choose interleaving overall compared to the group that didn't get it.
Okay. So why not? What else was going on?
Well, when the researchers dug into the qualitative data, what the students actually said about their choices and how they used the feedback, some really interesting things emerged.
The details matter.
They really do. First, for some students, the VFP seemed to just boost their confidence in whatever strategy they already preferred.
Confirmation bias?
Kind of, yeah. It acted like a confirmation.
Yeah.
If they already liked blocked practice because it felt easy initially, seeing that confirmed on the graph just made them feel more sure they were right. Same if they already liked interleaving.
Okay, so it just reinforced existing beliefs for some.
For some, yes. But on the other hand, there were definitely students who had initially preferred blocked practice, but did switch to interleaved after seeing the VFP.
Oh, good.
Yeah. They seemed to really notice and value those changes over time, seeing that interleaving got easier and felt more effective later on. This study even quotes one participant, number 90, who basically said, seeing the feedback convinced them they'd gradually get better with interleaving and better retain the information.
Okay, so it did work for some people, helping them overcome that initial hurdle.
It did. But then there was also the opposite effect. Some students actually used the VFP to double down on their preference for blocked practice.
How?
They focused specifically on the parts of the graph showing lower effort and maybe higher initial perceived learning for blocked practice. They used the data to justify sticking with the easier feeling method. Participants 77 and 76 were mentioned as examples of this.
Wow, so the same piece of information could be interpreted in completely different ways depending on your starting point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really highlights that just throwing data at people isn't always enough to change, deeply ingrained beliefs or habits about learning.
Yeah, clearly not. So why might the VFP not have been this magic bullet they might have hoped for?
The researchers offered a few potential reasons. One is that maybe those initial positive feelings with blocked practice, that quick sense of success, were just so strong and immediate that the later, more gradual improvements shown for interleaving just weren't compelling enough to make them switch. It's hard to argue with that feeling of, I got this right away.
That initial mastery feeling is powerful, yeah. Hard to ignore.
Another idea is that some students might have already kind of updated their beliefs about interleaving just by doing it in the first phase, even before they saw the visual feedback.
Ah, the experience itself taught them something.
Possibly. The study did find noticeable shifts in beliefs right after that first study phase. So maybe for some, the VFP was just telling them something they'd already started to figure out.
Okay. And we mentioned confirmation bias, too. People maybe just focusing on the data points that fit what they already thought.
Absolutely. That likely played a role, too. So the VFP attempt was really informative, but it showed just how complex this whole interplay is between our beliefs, our direct experiences, and the choices we make about how to learn.
Yeah, it's definitely not just about showing people the right answer. Much more going on under the surface.
For sure. And the qualitative findings, the student comments, really brought some of these other factors to light.
Like, what else influenced their choices?
Well, people's pre-existing beliefs and habits were huge initial drivers. You know, how they usually study. One participant, number 70, explicitly mentioned preferring that one thing at a time approach of block practice. Just felt right to them.
It feels very common, like it seems more organized.
It does. And how authentic the strategy felt also mattered. Participant 42 preferred the strategy that seemed to flow more naturally. Interestingly, different students felt different strategies were more natural.
So familiarity, comfort, those are big factors too.
Definitely. And during the study, people paid attention to different things. If they were doing blocked practice, they focused on how easily can I spot the similarities.
Right.
If they were doing interleaved, they were focused on how easily can I tell these apart, spot the differences.
Okay.
And one student, participant 20, made a really insightful comment. They noticed that after doing a block of one type of painting, they started forgetting the earlier ones when they moved to the next block.
Ah, that out of sight, out of mind feeling.
Exactly. And that observation actually started to make interleaved practice look more appealing to them because you're constantly retrieving different things.
That's a great example of learning from the process itself.
It is. And really encouragingly, some students consciously decided to, as the researchers put it, embrace the effort of interleaved practice.
Meaning
They recognized it was harder, but they also saw it was leading to better learning, so they made a deliberate choice to stick with it because of the benefit, despite the effort. Participant 121 was an example there.
that's fantastic. That's like a metacognitive breakthrough.
It really is. And finally, they saw different approaches to managing effort. Some were data-driven, adjusting how hard they tried based on how easy or hard that specific moment felt.
Okay.
Others were more goal-driven. They just decided to put in consistent effort to learn as much as possible, kind of regardless of the immediate ups and downs and difficulty.
So, wow. It's a really complex picture. Prior beliefs, feelings of naturalness, what you notice during practice, consciously embracing effort, different effort styles. It's way more than just easy versus hard.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the big question, really, bringing this all back to you, our listener.
Yeah.
What does this deep dive into this study actually mean for your learning, your study habits?
Yeah, the so what? What should we take away from all this?
Well, I think the absolute biggest takeaway, the main message, is that our initial gut feelings about how well a learning strategy is working can be,
Yeah.
well, pretty misleading sometimes.
Okay. Don't always trust that feeling of ease.
Exactly. Just because something feels challenging or effortful doesn't automatically mean you're not learning effectively. And maybe even more importantly, just because a method feels easy and comfortable,
Yeah.
that doesn't guarantee it's the best way to build strong, long-lasting understanding.
So maybe my comfortable habit of just, rereading my notes over and over before a big meeting, maybe that isn't actually doing me as much good as I think it is.
That's a very real possibility based on this and other research. This study strongly suggests that you might want to actively experiment with incorporating some interleaved practice,
Okay.
especially when you're dealing with different but related concepts or skills, maybe different sections of a report you need to know, different types of problems you need to solve, different skills you're trying to build.
So deliberately mixing things up more. Instead of spending, say, a whole afternoon on just budget analysis, maybe I break it up. Spend an hour on budgets, then switch to market trends for an hour, then back to budgets.
That's the kind of idea, yes.
Yeah.
And be prepared. It might feel a little clunkier, a bit more difficult, less fluent at first. You might not get that immediate, I've got this buzz that you get from focusing on just one thing.
Right, gotta expect that initial bumpiness.
Exactly. But remember what the study showed. Those subjective feelings, that sense of effort and learning, they can change over time with interleaved practice. If you persist, you're likely setting yourself up for better long-term recall and application.
And it also sounds like just being more aware, more metacognitive about my own learning process is really important here too.
Absolutely crucial. Take a moment to think about how you typically judge your own learning. How do you monitor your effort?
Mm-hmm.
Are you maybe relying too heavily on that immediate feeling of ease or difficulty? Try to be conscious of those potential biases we talked about, like the memorizing effort heuristic. And remember that those desirable difficulties, while maybe not fun in the moment, can really pay dividends later.
So even if I don't have a fancy visual feedback graph,
Right.
just consciously pausing and asking myself, okay, how much effort did that take? How well do I really feel I understand this? How well do I think I'll remember this tomorrow? That kind of self-reflection could actually help me make better choices about how I study or practice.
That's exactly the idea. The studies suggest that simply engaging in that repeated monitoring of your own effort and learning, even without any external prompts, has the potential to improve your strategy use over time.
This has definitely given me a lot to chew on. I feel like I need to seriously reconsider some of my default learning approaches.
Well, that's fantastic. That's the whole point of these deep dives.
Yeah.
So just to quickly wrap up the key points we've uncovered today,
Yeah, let's recap.
we've really explored that tension, that conflict between how effective learning strategies feel and how effective they actually are.
Right. The feeling versus the reality.
We looked closely at interleaved practice, its initial challenges, why it feels hard, but also its eventual benefits for deeper learning and distinguishing concepts.
And the importance of sticking with it, knowing the feeling can improve.
Exactly. And finally, we underscored how vital it is to look beyond those immediate, sometimes misleading feelings of effort and ease when we're deciding how to learn something effectively.
Okay. And now, as always, that final provocative thought to leave everyone with.
All right.
Now that you're more aware of these dynamics, the seductive feeling of easy learning versus the real power of maybe a little productive struggle, what's one small, concrete change you could make to your learning approach, maybe just this week, to actually test some of these ideas out?
Yeah, what experiment could you run on yourself?
Maybe try mixing up study topics when you wouldn't normally, or deliberately choose to tackle a slightly harder concept using interleaving. What one small thing could you try?
Great question to ponder. And remember, this deep dive came directly from the excellent material you, our listeners, share with us. So please keep those sources and ideas coming for future explorations.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the sometimes surprising science of learning.
Until next time.